Hello everyone and welcome back to another Grand Archive video. Today, as you can see, I will be doing a tier list on all of the champions inside of Grand Archive. Now I'll be ranking these champions based on these 5 tiers. As you can see, we've got S+, which I think are just the best decks in the game right now. You've got tier 1, which are decks that can be taken to any high level event and you can perform incredibly well with, and ones that have already performed incredibly well at events. Tier 1.5, these are decks that are just on like the brink of being like super good, either if like a new set came out and just gave them the right support, or they're just not there on like getting to tier 1, if that makes sense. Then you've got tier 2, these are still super solid decks with the right pilot. These can be topping events, but they're decks that just perform less consistently and in my opinion have less of a toolbox than other champions. And then there's tier 3, which in my opinion are going to be the champions that aren't as good. Now I have included allies as a title under some of the champions. This is just because I think that they're either super good decks or decks that just should be talked about as they're quite relevant. Decks like Tonoris is obviously very powerful, so I put an allies tag under it, and then you'll be thinking, oh, what's the other Tonoris for then? And that's just, in my opinion, the ones without headings are either focusing on going to level 3 or just like their strategy, if that kind of makes sense. By the way, before we start this video, I would like to say that don't take these rankings as like you shouldn't play these decks. Play whatever you're happy with and you're most comfortable with and enjoy. This is just my opinion on, you know, how these rank in the meta, and if these decks were to go to a high level tournament, how they would perform. So definitely don't be discouraged to run some decks that I might put in tier 2 or 3. And yeah, without further ado, let's start the video. Starting off with one of the ALC new champions, we have got Arisanna. Now I'm going to put Fire and Wind Arisanna in tier 3 just because in my opinion they lack the control and match up against some of the higher tier decks. So I think Arisanna was specifically meant to be played for water. Obviously that was its main element from ALC, so I will be putting Arisanna water in tier 2. It's just because it's still decent. Like Arisanna has still got some good cards, especially some of the Astra cards that, you know, you can do star calling for. I just don't think that the fire and wind element were meant for Arisanna, and I think it's just specifically meant for water. Arisanna's still got all the herbs, the brewing, which is still a very good effect, but I just don't think she can keep up with some of the higher tier champions at the moment. Next we've got Diana. Now Fire Diana I will be putting in tier 1.5. This is because I still think Carter is incredibly overpowered. I still think Taser Shot is an incredibly overpowered card. Diana also does have some new support from MRC, so it'll be interesting to see how she does with the upcoming regionals. And yeah, so I do think Fire Diana is still very powerful. Just being able to lock your opponent into leveling up if you get to level 3 quick enough with the Taser Shot Shadows Twin combo. Yeah, deck's just solid. I do think it is a little bit hard to defend. This deck is so solely focused on getting to level 3 that if you're versing like an aggro deck like Fire Zander aggro or like Wind Tonoris allies that are just consistently applying pressure on you, then you're gonna struggle a wee bit. But yeah, overall solid deck, putting in tier 1.5. Water Diana allies. Now I'll be putting this also in tier 1.5 just because of the toolbox that water has. Obviously it has allies like Frostworn Paladin, Korhazi Trapper, super solid allies, and then you pair it with the cards like Frostbind and Fracturize. This deck can get very, very good, and if you wanted to at the end you can level up to 3 and obviously Taser Shot or get the final blow with a big shot with your gun. So yeah, Water Diana allies, decent solid deck. I'm putting it in tier 1.5 just because I don't think it is as good as some of the other allied decks, as you'll be seeing coming up. Moving on to just Water Diana. Now this in my opinion would just be, you know, getting to level 3 using your Water Ranger cards. I will be putting this in tier 2 just because I don't think it's as powerful as playing Water Diana allies. I know the system that I've set up is kind of confusing with like one deck playing allies and one without, because obviously Water Diana will be playing allies, but I've tried to make it so that you can see decks that are solely like focused on allies, and that's just the best way I thought I could do it. It might not be, it might not turn out to be, but that's just how I've done it for now. So yeah, Water Diana I think is a bit average without solely focusing on applying pressure with allies. The Water Ranger cards are a bit average, and yeah, I just don't think it'd be able to compete with some of the top tier decks. Same goes for Wind Diana. Yeah, literally just I don't think the Wind Ranger cards are as good as the Fire Ranger cards. Cards like Fiery Duelist are very good in Fire Diana, and you can obviously play Creative Shock, Hasty Messenger, Cremation Ritual, cards like that unfortunately wind and water lack, being able to continuously draw cards and just outpace your opponent. So yeah, that's where I'm going to be putting all of the Dianas. Moving on to Fire Lorraine. Now in my opinion this would be aggro Fire Lorraine, so you know you've got your Rendings, your Blazing Throws, cards like that. I'll be putting this in tier 1.5. Now this is a very old deck, a DOA kind of format. This deck was very powerful back then. I still think it has the potential to do well at events. Rending is still a very good card. Blazing Throw is still a very good card. Obviously Lorraine being able to get a sword out when she goes to level 1, you can materialize a sword for free, so you know you can be starting to stack up a lot of damage very quickly, and yeah, that's why I'll be putting it in tier 1.5. Moving on, we have got Water Lorraine allies. Now I will be putting this in tier 1. I do think this is super powerful. It is like Water Diana, but you've also got the ability to go to level 3 and use Crux cards like Ghost of Pendragon, like Spirit Blade Dispersion like we saw with Marnie at Worlds. It's a very solid deck that can, you know, control the game and apply pressure at the same time. It's very filthy. Just regular Water Lorraine I'll be putting in tier 1.5. Obviously it's still Lorraine, it's still got all of the toolbox of warrior cards. I just think it's overshadowed by the allies version of it, so in my opinion, just like without the allies heading, this would just be trying to get to level 3 and, you know, use the Crux cards. I don't see it being a super good deck. It's still tier 1.5 because I think Lorraine's the best champion in the game at the moment. She's just consistent. She's been consistent since the start of the game. That's why I'm putting the Water Lorraine in tier 1.5. Lorraine Wind allies. Now I will still be putting this deck in 1.5. I still do think it can perform well. I just think after the Crystal of Empowerment ban, it did hurt the deck in terms of using like cards like Banner Knight, and it's also heavily overshadowed by Wind Tonoris allies. Definitely for Wind allies, I think Tonoris is just the better champion to run with them. I think the new Guardian cards especially are super powerful, and I think they just synchronize better with Tonoris. But overall, Wind Lorraine allies, super good deck. And yeah, moving on to just regular Wind Lorraine. Now I will be slightly biased. I am going to put this in tier 1 because I do run this deck, but I genuinely do think this is a very good deck. You've got cards like, you know, Phalanx Captain, Banner Knight, all those cards to buff your guys, and then you go to level 3 and use Ghost of Pendragon, Spirit Blade Ascension, ripping a card out from your opponent's memory every turn. I think this deck is super good and balanced, not just because I run it, but yeah, running this deck just feels super smooth and balanced and consistent, and that's why I'm putting it in tier 1. Fire Merlin. Now it might cause a bit of drama, but I do think it is S+. I do think it is the best deck in the game right now. Even after receiving barely any support from MRC, I still think Fire Merlin is the most consistently good performing deck in the game. This isn't just because Glen won with it at Worlds, obviously that is a big factor, but this deck just has consistently good matchups across the board. Like if you're running this deck, you shouldn't really be worried about going into many matchups. Like seriously, this deck just has solid matchups against everything. Super good win cons, cards like Fireball, you've got Pendragon, you've got Devastating Blow. It's just honestly the best deck in the game in my opinion, and that's why I'm putting it in S+. Watermelon I think is a bit average. I will be putting this in tier 2 just because I don't think it's as good as Fire Merlin or Wind Merlin. I will be putting Wind Merlin in tier 1.5 just because I think cards like Zephyr and Reclaim and stuff do help it, and obviously Temporal Spectrometer you can run with this deck, makes it super solid, makes it super good, and this deck also does allow Horse to have a bit more protection, or Deer or Majestic Spirit, whatever you guys want to call it. So yeah, I will be putting Wind Merlin in tier 1.5 because the potential is there for this deck to perform well. I just don't see it performing well at the moment, or many people running it. Next we have Water Nico. Now also I'll be putting this in tier 2. Now Nico, with all the new mill cards, she does have the potential to be good. I think we'll just have to wait until further into the season to see. If you guys want to see a good deck list on it, make sure to check out Creative Shocks because they just uploaded a deck tech on Watermill Nico, so make sure to check that out. I'll leave it in the description. She's definitely got potential to be good, but I just don't know if she's good at the moment. I'll just have to wait and see. Fire Polkhawk. Now I do think he is tier 3. Honestly, I've never versed this deck. I've never seen it in any tournament. I just don't think it's that good, to be honest. The cards for it were kind of average, and yeah, that's why I'm putting it in tier 3. Moving on to Rye. Now Fire Rye I think is very easily tier 1, near the higher end of tier 1. You saw how many people were representing it at Worlds. This deck is just very, very good at doing what it needs to do. Getting to level 3, fireballing and arcane blasting your opponent. You've obviously also got cards like Anger the Skies to deal with allies, Careful Study to get those enlightenment counters, Parent Mana to get those enlightenment counters, Scry the Skies to get the cards you want. It's just a very, very good deck. Water Rye, I think, is tier 2. I don't see many people representing it, and I think Rye is just super focused on arcane stuff, and I just think Water's a bit slow to get there. I think the reason Fire Rye is so high on the list is because Fire has just got easily by far the best draw cards in the game. Cards like Creative Shot, Cremation Ritual, cards like that to just draw you endless amounts of cards. Winrai, I think, is the same story. I will be putting it in tier 2 just because I think it's just not good enough anymore. This was actually a popular deck in DOA format, being able to use cards like Disorientating Winds, so still getting to level 3 and also having the wind package, so it was a good deck. I just think it has fallen off a bit in comparison to a deck like Fire Rye. Now the new cards, we've got obviously the new Recollection decks coming out. We have got Silvie. Now I did do a deck profile with Aiden the other day on Fire Silvie allies. I am going to put this in tier 1 for now because, now hear me out before you go commenting, I do think this deck is incredibly filthy and has the potential to perform very well at high events. This deck also was represented quite a bit in the recent Luxurious map tournament a couple days ago. This deck being able to get to level 3 on like turn 3 and then killing them that turn with cards like Storm Slime and Ethereal Slime. This deck is incredibly scary because it can go multiple routes, either damaging you with allies or damaging you with the spell effect of Storm Slime. So you're going to have Resolute and Blanche in hand, which is very hard. And yeah, so honestly, the villain arc of Silvie is pretty crazy. She used to be, you know, like the worst champion in the game in my opinion, and now she's one of the better ones, so big ups to Silvie. And yeah, that's where I'm placing Fire Silvie allies. Just Fire Silvie on her own, the strategy would be like going level 3 with like all the Terra cards. I do still think it's very low on the categories. I'll be putting it tier 2 just because I think it's just a bit average. I don't really think there's much point running Fire Silvie or just any of the Silvies without a heavy focus on the slimes, especially ally focused, because you can just pump a lot of damage with the buff counters on Silvie's allies. So yeah, I think just Fire Silvie strategy, I think I'm going to be putting tier 2. So this is Norm Silvie, so this is like the Spirit of Slime Silvie. I'll be putting tier 1.5. I don't think this is as good as just the focused Fire Silvie allies deck, but I do think this is still very good because you do have the ability to use all the other slimes. It also had a good representation at the Luxurious map tournament. I'm very excited to see how Silvie does in this format because some of the cards that she has are actually incredibly broken now. Cards like Gaia's Blessing is super powerful. Cards like Baby Grey Slime are just like super good, and yeah, it's exciting to see how far this deck will go. Just Water Silvie, I'm going to be putting in tier 3 unfortunately. It's kind of the same story as Fire Silvie, except it just has a worse kind of control and end game. I don't see Water Silvie doing really much in this format just without focusing on like allies or anything. So yeah, I'm putting it in tier 3. Wind Silvie allies, I will be putting tier 2 along with just Wind Silvie. I both think they're a bit average. Obviously Green Slime is super powerful, but other than that, I don't think they have a very good toolbox going into some of the top decks, like for example Fire Rye, Fire Merlin, Wind Lorraine allies. So yeah, so I'll be putting it tier 2. Now moving on to Tonoris, I'll be putting Fire Tonoris, which might be a bit of a shock to some people, but I'll be putting it in tier 3 just because I don't think there's any point running Tonoris if you're not going to be running the water or wind element. I think Fire Tonoris just doesn't have as much power as the water or wind. The whole point of Tonoris is to help you guys survive and do big attacks, and I just think water and wind do that better. Just Water Tonoris on its own, so focusing on the Neos cards, I'll be putting tier 2. I just think it's not that good. The Neos cards, in my opinion, I would just prefer to be running allies and like using obviously the level 1 taunt ability. So yeah, I think Water Tonoris is good, but I think Water Tonoris allies is just infinitely better. I will be putting Wind Tonoris in tier 1.5 just because that was his main element, Wind Neos, and I have seen some Wind Neos decks doing quite well, so the potential's there, and I'm just going to hold off putting it super high for now, so I'll just be putting it tier 1.5 just because it has some potential. Moving on to the allies versions of Tonoris, I'm going to be putting both of these in tier 1. I think the new Tonoris allies support in MRC was just cracked. Like, some of the cards I was reading the other day, I was like, what the heck? They have a 2/2 taunt now, which is like sick, and there's other good cards for both strategies. So tier 1, I wouldn't be surprised seeing these decks do well at some upcoming tournaments. So yeah, just a good deck. Fire Tristan, now for now I'll be putting this at tier 2, but in the future I think this could definitely get better. I see this as a deck like Fire Aggro Zander was in DOA. Obviously Fire Tristan being able to draw cards consistently when you level up could make this deck better, but we'll have to wait and see. So for now I will be putting it at tier 2 just because it's 2 weeks after MRC. There hasn't been many super high level tournaments other than the Lux Series map, and I just didn't see much representation of this deck. Next we have Water Tristan. I'll also be putting this at tier 2 just because I haven't seen much of it. I would like to see Tristan performing well. I think she's a super unique character with some cool effects, but for now I'm just going to be putting her in tier 2. Now Wind Tristan is the one deck I will be putting in tier 1.5 just because this was the element that was kind of made for Tristan. I think cards like Stifling Trap are like insanely powerful. Like, being able to activate it from your memory is just crazy, and negating an on-enter effect, I think that is just sick. And yeah, I am excited to see how Wind Tristan does in this format, so I'll be putting it at 1.5 just because the potential's there, and yeah, I guess we'll just wait and see how it does. Next we have Win Vanitas. Now I do think Vanitas has a bit more of a toolbox than Polkhawk, but I think he's a little bit less on the side of Nico. He obviously does have access to cards like Zephyr and Fairy Whispers and stuff, but I just don't think he's a very good champion compared to stuff like Win Tonoris or Win Lorraine or Win Tristan. I do think it was a cool addition to the game, adding champions that have their own element at level 2 that you can mix and match with, but I just think for now I'm going to leave these champions quite low on the tiers, and if they start performing well they'll earn their spot on the higher tiers. Fire Zander, I do still heavily respect this deck. Obviously the new assassin support out just makes this deck even better. The negate target activation card is super good. Fire Aggro Zander I think is going to be very good in this format. Fire Serene Zander going to level 3 I think is going to be very, very good in this format, and I would not be surprised to see us topping events. Water Zander allies, I will be putting this at tier 1.5, going for that big turn with Poison Dagger where you're being able to hit them for an extra 1, and then all your allies are swinging and they're hitting for an extra 1. It's just very good. I still do respect this deck, but yeah, I will be putting it tier 1.5 because there is potential for it to do well, but I'm just going to hold off putting it super high for now because I think Fire Zander is just the best version of Zander that you could be running right now. Just Water Zander, so this will be trying to do all your Luxem stuff. I will be putting tier 2 along with Wind Zander. I do mention obviously with Stifling Trap and new Wind Assassin cards that we should be watching Wind Zander because it does have the potential to be very good. I think these decks just trying to do their thing going to level 3 and revealing all the Luxem cards, I think Fire Zander just outshines it so much, and yeah, that's why I'm putting them on the lower tier. Last but not least, Glen, S+ tier. He's just the goat of GA. I thought it'd be funny to add him in here. He's a good guy, good friend, obviously won Worlds, absolute champion, and he's just the goat of GA, so I thought I'd add him in here. Anyways, that is all I have for you guys today. This is the final list that I have came up with. Let me know what you think down in the comments if you have any different opinions. There are a lot of new exciting strategies that we have yet to explore with MRC dropping. It is still very new, the set. I think it's only been like a couple weeks. Season's only been out for a week, so very hyped for that, and all the regionals coming up going to be very cool. I'll try to do an updated version at the end of the season, see if some of my predictions were good, or if some of these decks performed way better than they would, or if they didn't perform as well. I think it'd be cool to document that. And yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you in the next one. If you're looking to buy some affordable Grand Archive singles for your deck, make sure to check out Card Merchant Nelson, and if you want to get a discount and help support the channel, use code LeviTCG for 5% off on your order.